The first Demon King ruled for 1,000 years, but was defeated by an unknown, as a result of which he lost his throne. According to rumors, today is the 7th day since the Demon King was replaced. Meanwhile, the royal family began to gather brave warriors who would be able to kill the new ruler until he strengthened his strength. This is a brilliant opportunity to become a warrior who defeated the Demon King. And thanks to this boy, a new legend will be written. We are transported to the city of Erms, where one of the knights meets the new warriors. He thanks them for coming and says that only one of them will be chosen to fight the Demon King. One survivor of this duel will be given the honor, together with the strongest archer Akna, magician Kadim, and healer, to take the Demon King's head off his shoulders. You need to fight to the very end and stay alive. Here in the crowd, where the blonde man was standing, there is a sharp rumble, after which a man in uniform appears in the Blue Blossom Club. The crowd cheers, greeting the commander of the knight's squad. But the surprises didn't end there. Next to the guy, another bully has landed, an invincible bark, crazy about war, who calls out to the blonde and calls him a brat, saying that the guy's place is in the public area, and if he doesn't want to be crippled, then it's time to leave. The man standing at the head of the knight's guard supports him, saying that he himself cannot believe that some little thing is on the square for duels. The boy just grins, answering them by saying that taking subordinates with him to a place where only one warrior is chosen is not really something that passes for knightly pride. It certainly angers men, because the two of them rush at a teenager with a gun, while the latter thinks that it's just a little dangerous. Well, then, he stomps his foot on the ground, standing up in a stance, so much so that the floor crumbles and breaks into numerous fragments, while the shockwave throws opponents up together with his subordinates. The blonde grabs the hilt of the sword and jumps up, hitting everyone in the air with one sharp movement. The squad leader and the bark are just lying on the ground while the squad of heroes and the gray-haired knight are standing in complete shock, not understanding what just happened. The crowd cheers, calling the kid cool. The first to wake up was the herald, whose eyes immediately lit up from such a show. He says that the hero has amazing skills before he decides to ask about his name. With a satisfied smile, the hero says that his name is Hans. The knight immediately appoints him as the commander of the Demon King's destruction squad. And while everyone was happy with someone else's little victory, a dark-haired man with bright yellow eyes was watching all this from the castle window. One of the servants asks him what he thinks about all this, to which he receives an answer. The boy seems useful, so it's worth sending him for now. Then we are shown the entrance to the Demon King's castle. The squad is heading straight there, while Hans begins to suspect something. The security turned out to be much worse than it was thought from the very beginning. Usually, in the forest of the Demon King, you can't even get through because of the powerful barrier. Akna, on the other hand, grins, arguing that, apparently, the new ruler is working on the dump, or has spent all his strength on seizing the throne of the previous king. Kadim is only glad of this, because it's much easier for them, otherwise they could have wandered there for not much longer. The archer is distracted from the conversation, noticing aloud that the healer is somehow too slow behind them. She calls out to the guy in the hood, calling him a jerk and hurrying him, although he gives a buff standing behind, but he is able to walk normally at least now. The magician also turns to them, saying that judging by the fact that the healer was already scared, this time they chose a clearly unsuccessful one. Hans, who also drew attention to the mess, immediately hurries to calm everyone down. A healer is definitely needed in the team. The latter, for some reason, really freezes, while Kadim begins to realize that something is really wrong behind. Turning his head, he notices a huge golem towering over them, and then immediately calls the warrior to turn around. Not having time to react enough, Hans only turns his head before his body is thrown aside by a giant stone hand. Fortunately, he managed to at least substitute a sword at the end. The magician immediately stood in a stance while fireballs began to appear in his palms, and the girl immediately took out a bow and pulled the string, preparing for an attack. But for some reason, the characters freeze in place, as if they are waiting for something. The healer tightens his grip on his book before Kadim snaps at him. He urgently needs to make a buff, and he is standing like a pillar. Hans, pinned to the stone wall by such a force of the golem's blow, shouts to them not to drag out time, but to start the attack as soon as possible, while the hooded man is still standing and silent, not even moving. The magician transforms one huge fireball from two, while the archer pulls the bowstring tighter and lets go, sending the arrow flying so that it collides with the flame of magic, merging together and heading straight for the golem. The blast wave causes the monster to stagger and lean back, which forced the warrior to act. The blonde immediately jumps up from his seat, clutching his sword, and after that the weapon lights up with a bright yellow light before he rushes to the slowly falling golem. Gripping the handle harder, hand swings and with one precise blow splits the monster in half, causing it to crumble into numerous stones. Getting back on his feet, the guy immediately smiles, clearly pleased with his victory, and turns to the squad to report that the guards were still present here, but then sees how Kadam grabs the healer by the breasts, indignant that he does nothing, although it is his duty to give a buff to the heroes during battle time. The magician promises that he will deal with him when they get home, before the blonde man runs up to them, who immediately asks his friend to calm down. In the end, maybe he was just confused, but as soon as the man in the hood is released, he starts laughing, loudly, straight to Mach, before calling the heroes complete scum who are not able to destroy such a golem without buffs. Akna says he's crazy, because the monster was definitely level 1 in size. Don't they even teach healers that? The guy continues to burst out laughing, and then stretches out his hand, showing the squad a small stone in the palm of his hand. What has been destroyed now will barely pass for this cobblestone. The girl keeps straining, not understanding what nonsense he is talking about. Endowing with vital energy, gigantism, increasing strength, these are buffs that he used only on such a stone. But what happens if you use them on a huge cobblestone? Pointing towards the cluster of stones, he uses his abilities before a purple circle appears next to his palm, the rays of which frame the entire alien silhouette. The squad froze in complete shock, looking at how another golem rises from a pile of boulders in front of them, which is several times larger than the previous one. The healer finally takes off his hood, revealing his pale face, snow-white hair, and scarlet eyes to the heroes. He only wonders what level this monster has, while the unfortunate Kadam only manages to mumble something about mercy before he is overtaken by a huge stone fist that drives the guy's body into the ground, smearing it on the ground. Hands froze with complete shock near this very fist, unable to utter a word. The white-haired one asks Beta to open the door for him before a portal appears in front of him. When asked what to do with the warrior, the healer orders to leave him, since he has nothing to do with their goals. Before entering the portal, already inside, he sits on the throne while being told that it was a great job, simultaneously calling him the Demon King. His memories began from the very day when his father returned from the war. None of the participants from the groups that were returning back from the dungeons to the applause of people were injured. Only the father behind him became a corpse. No one was sad. Nobody. At the age of 12, he became a healer with Maddie. The team members received more injuries than the monsters, but he tried to hold on. He had no other job that would allow him to feed his family. It seemed to him that Maddie also worked as a healer for the sake of the family. They comforted each other and day by day tried not to lose heart. And while the guy and the girl were sitting peacefully and looking at the night sky, he was hailed by some red-haired bully, who, apparently, is a warrior of their squad. He grabs the white-haired man by the breasts, saying that he asked him to do buffs normally, and then shows the cut, proving to the healers that they don't understand anything at all. The hero responds without hesitation by not only giving him the maximum buff, but also a barrier before he gets slapped in the face and falls to the ground. The warrior is clearly displeased with such audacity. Does the healer think that if they are on the same team, then they are somehow equal? If he doesn't know how to do anything except buffs, then at least let him apply them normally. And if he doesn't like something, then let him put all his buffs on the line and challenge him to a duel. The beaten guy only humbles him with a menacing look of scarlet eyes, but does not have time to react properly when he sees that someone else's toe of a metal shoe is directed at his face. The red-haired man is again dissatisfied with the fact that some freak dared to look at him from under his brows, while the same freak is almost lying unconscious from the force of the blow. The warrior grabs the teammate by the hair before swinging, saying that he has no manners when the owner is talking, while the rest of the squad members just stand and are silent from behind. The knight continues his tirade. The mutt, who grins at his master, must die. And just as his fist is about to come into contact with someone else's head, he was stopped by someone else's hands in time. The incomprehensible and beaten hero looks at how Maddie covered him with her body from the blow, and began to say that they are very sorry, and this will never happen again. The fist was still pressed against her sacred center, and she herself was still tense, ready to receive a blow at any moment. A nasty smile appears on the red-haired man's face before he grabs her by the palm and asks if she will apologize instead of him, and then begins to drag her along. The brown-haired woman resists, ordering Tom to let her go and stop, and then the main character himself breaks off after them. Before he was stopped by an archer, the man points an arrow at him and orders him not to move. Healers cannot harm warriors, and if he makes a mistake, they can easily kill him. The arrow appears in front of the very nose, while a variety of thoughts are swarming in the guy's head. Kill? No, Maddie's there, he can't let that happen. He just has to save her. Twitching to the side, he runs, spitting on someone else's threat, before stopping near the stairs, blinking in surprise. The girl with tears in her eyes smiled at him as she left with the warrior. The guy remained sitting, being in complete shock. The night gradually gave way to a cloudy morning, and he still continued to stare at one point. And then, hearing some sound, he immediately woke up and hopefully called his girlfriend, turning to the team that went outside. The warrior asks him if he really has been hanging around here all these hours, but the healer does not answer, continuing to mutter only one thing. Maddie, where is she? The red-haired man only apologizes with the same vile smile, and then says that she resisted too much, so he smacked her once, and Maddie screamed and died. Tears immediately gushed from his eyes, while the guy himself still could not figure out how it happened. A girl from the team whispered something in the knight's ear before he pronounced a verdict. They were kicking him out of the team and they would have to find other healers. I wonder how the drooping blonde thinks himself. Will he cope alone with what the two of them could not do? The team turns around and leaves, saying goodbye to him, while the hero is shaking with tears and rests his palms on the floor. What bastards they are. Murderers. Along with the tears, blood begins to drip onto the stone slabs. He clenches his hands into fists, biting his lip until it bleeds, trying to restrain sobs in this way. He'll just kill them.